Imagine having to marry off your best friend to your husband. That's the nightmare this terminally ill woman faces after being cruelly betrayed by both of them. What seemed like her tragic end is just the beginning. After dying, she returns 10 years into the past. She vows that, if it's the last thing she does, she will take revenge on the traitors who ruined her life. Today, you might feel a surge of rage, but you'll also understand why this drama has the potential to be the best of the year. In this video about the drama, My Husband's Wife, we can say that Khan didn't have an easy life. Spending her days in a hospital with terminal stomach cancer, she barely remembers the last time she was happy. Her professional life was undervalued, and everything fell apart after marrying Park Min-won, a mama's boy. I'll give you a taste of the kind of trash he is. We're talking about a guy who always treated his wife like a full-time servant and was outraged when she got sick. Who would cook for the spoiled brat? Who would support him financially while he glued himself to the couch playing video games? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. Even though she had always been humiliated and mentally tortured by her husband's family, Deon at least had someone by her side, her only and best friend, Sumin. It would be lovely if all this sweetness and solidarity weren't a complete facade. After chemotherapy, Deon is informed that her treatment isn't being paid for, and she has no choice but to go home. When she tells the driver about her miserable life, he takes her on a scenic route to show that there are always better paths and kindly doesn't charge her for the ride. If Deon's life wasn't already terrible, it only gets worse when she arrives home to a horrifying truth. Her husband is cheating on her with her best friend, Sum. The vile pair laugh in her bed, gloating about having taken out a cancer insurance policy in Deon's name and discussing what they'll do with the money once she finally dies. The level of disappointment, pain, and hatred for being betrayed by the closest people is immense. Despite being inconsolable, Deon confronts the despicable lovers. It turns into a fight where the frail Deon is at a disadvantage. When her pathetic husband pushes her, she hits her head on a glass table and bleeds to death alone. But wait, she opens her eyes again, and the first thing she sees is the scumbag. You've got to be kidding, she must be in hell. It doesn't matter that hell looks like her office. The bastard's betrayal is fresh in her memory, and she wants nothing more than to unleash her fury and yank out some of his hair. But things get weird when her boss, Jae-hook, with his charming glasses, intervenes. He saves her twice. Once by diverting a boiling electric kettle from hitting her and then by preventing her from falling down the stairs when she fled in panic. It's only then that she realizes that the terrifying moment she lived through wasn't her end but a new beginning. Deon isn't in 2023 anymore. She's back in 2013. Noticing her disoriented state, her tall, handsome, and sensual boss takes her home and feeds her. Eating that instant noodle is the happiest moment she's had in years. Though the situation is confusing, Deon finds answers to her questions when she rummages through her pockets. The money the taxi driver gave her has a heart drawn on it, just like her deceased father used to do. She's been resurrected in the past because her father's spirit gave her one last gift. Deon may have parachuted into the second chance, but she's quick to figure out she has 10 years to reverse some things. Starting with money, she knows very well which companies will be successful in the future, so she wisely invests in the right places to fatten her utterly depleted bank account. Simultaneously, she encourages her lousy boyfriend to invest in a company that will go bankrupt in the future. According to a test, she's still cancer-free, so it's time to take care of that gastritis. Third and most important, she hasn't yet married the scoundrel, so she still has a chance to nip it in the bud. Of course, it wouldn't be easy because the jerk's violent nature is still the same. When Deon tries to end the relationship, he doesn't accept it passively, and she realizes she needs to devise more effective plans. This involves using all the cold blood in her body to face the people who betrayed her and who will follow the same disastrous path if nothing is done. Despite appearances, Deon isn't completely alone. It seems we have the hunky boss, Rio. Although he observes her with an intriguing look, he's surprisingly attentive and friendly, which already sets him apart from anyone else in Deon's life. He's different from the strict boss she knew in the first timeline. Now, he openly praises her skills and qualities, encouraging her to rebuild the self-esteem that had been ruined by toxic people for so long. Besides, he always shows up at the right moment for Deon, almost as if he knows all her problems. Interesting. The fact that he burned himself to help her sparked a light in Deon's head. The scar he got from this accident is identical to the one she had in the original timeline. Moreover, Deon tries her best to avoid a scratch on her knee, but it's as if the stars force it to happen, so she ends up with the same injury, only hurting herself differently this time. However, she manages to prevent her frenemy Sumin from appearing the same way she did in the first life when she intentionally spilled food to humiliate Deon. This time, it's Miran who ends up ruined. So, what does this mean? Deon understands that some events are inevitable, but the involved parties can change. For instance, if someone is destined to get hurt, someone will have to get hurt at some point. If someone is destined to marry, a marriage must occur. But this time, it won't be Deon. The new plan is to transfer her tragic fate to someone else, and there's no one better to steal her miserable future than Sumin. To make her taste her own medicine, the more we learn about the deceitful traitor, the more we discover she deserves it. She has always been a fifth-rate phony who, in the first life, pretended to be a saint while sabotaging Deon and stealing her friend's ideas to get promoted. It seems like poor Deon was always surrounded by people who crawled straight out of the sewers. For example, there's a manager there who's a complete creep. We should agree to call him something like Sleazy Suit. This guy is a machine gun of nonsense, committing verbal crimes against women daily instead of working. But because of the small changes Deon has executed, new good people also have an opening to enter her life to balance out all the filth. There's her next-door co-worker, Mrs. Young, who was originally wronged at work but is now willing to work with Deon to be heard and valued. Also, there's a new friendship with Ruan, a dear extrovert whose optimistic and confident personality is the perfect complement Deon needed. Even knowing the true nature of the traitors, Deon is determined to make Sumin steal her destiny. For that, she keeps up the appearances of being naive, dumb, and in love with the fool, and it works. Jealous of her friend, Sumin starts provoking Deon's boyfriend, and being the cheater he is, he can't resist the temptations. Besides being smart, Deon's patience is also admirable. Only she could tolerate and string along the pathetic Minun with his broken sensual censor, who's so idiotic it's funny. And Sumin, always venomous, sucking the energy out of Deon like a dementor. Her whole life was like this. Deon was kept in a possessive and obsessive affection with Sumin, who needed to put her friend down to feel superior. She would intentionally give Deon bad fashion tips to diminish her. Low, right? It's no wonder Sumin gifts her earrings just like in the first life. But Deon now knows better. The earrings are fake, and Sumin's intention was to take her to the classic high school reunion just to humiliate her in front of those who bullied her all through adolescence. Besides, Juk notices the forgery and warns her not to wear them. He's pulling some strings to help Deon somehow. He meets with the famous chef, Yunu, and asks him to attend the high school reunion, which will be crucial. Even though the school event was traumatizing in the first life, Deon now knows Sumin's dirty tricks and plans to do things differently this time. Ruan, the sweetheart, shows up at the right moment to encourage Deon to go, turn the page, leave the past behind, and not allow herself to be intimidated anymore. And look, even Cinderella didn't have a fairy godmother as good as Deon has in Ruan. This earth angel took her friend for a drastic makeover to highlight the beauty Deon couldn't see in herself anymore. Seeing her reborn reflection in the mirror, she can't hold back the tears. And I nearly went along, so immense was my joy in witnessing the light of true female friendship, which starkly contrasts with some's deceitfulness. See? Never deny a woman a tampon because you never know how she might repay you. What a scene! Deon arrives confidently at the gathering, dropping jaws everywhere. But the most satisfied with the epic transformation is the sly one herself. With this, the original scenario of the first timeline is turned upside down, especially when Deon not only reveals the truth about Sum's fake earrings but also refuses to be treated like a doormat, confronting the bullies who tormented her. Deon discovers Sum is even more despicable than she imagined. It turns out the liar always spread stories about how it was her who helped Deon get a job and that, despite this, Deon was a jealous friend who stole her boyfriends. Can you believe this, which accused Deon of doing everything she herself did? Oh, she's truly one of a kind, worse than any other girl. But she won't get away with it. Deon exposes all of Sum's deceptions, and seeing this fraud get humiliated in front of everyone is glorious to watch. Feminism, forgive me, but there's no defending this woman. She's more of a skeleton driven by greed and falsehood. I'm just exercising my right as a viewer. I can criticize the character. It's in the viewer's right statute. To top off the humiliation, the famous chef, Yunu, the boyfriend Sum accused Deon of stealing, arrives thanks to Juk's intervention. The guy is there to debunk Sum's lies. They never dated, so Deon couldn't have plotted for them to break up. Some would definitely bury her head in the ground if she could. Meanwhile, Yunu looks like a happy Labrador, especially since Deon accidentally let slip that she liked him back in school. His feelings were mutual. She was also his first love. There's just one sad thing in all this. Juk, who watches everything from a corner, feels a pang of jealousy and calls Deon, inventing a reason for her to leave. Sure, being called to work on the weekend isn't great, but this is an extremely important opportunity. She went to support her boss at an advertising presentation for an innovative project no one believed in. There, she recognizes an unpleasant businessman who will be involved in a future abuse of power scandal. Besides, Juk defends Deon's potential when she's undervalued by the jerk and smoothly puts the detestable guy in his mediocre place. Juk continues doing everything for humanity, making Deon comfortable, encouraging her to achieve her dreams, boosting her self-esteem to the skies, and offering to teach her self-defense since she wants to learn. For the first time in a long time, we see a rejuvenated Deon, radiating confident brilliance. This enigmatic hottie clearly has a secret, and every day I woke up hoping the diva would realize her salvation stands 6 feet 2 inches, wears charming glasses, and has an enchanting shy smile that escapes from the corner of his mouth. This nerdy, captivating, and awkward Adonis exudes charm in everything he does. From the way he vents to his cat to how he changes his style to impress Deon and gets hilariously flustered by her stunning beauty at the office. Min Wan is also perplexed, but Deon pays no mind to this little worm, giving him nothing more than a deliberate coffee spill. Dealing with this brainless twit is easy because he has only 2 neurons, and only one is functional. The real challenge is facing the hag. Even after tasting punishment when she was exposed and abandoned, Some doesn't learn. Her need to belittle Deon is sickening, but instead of seeking therapy, she advances the easiest plan, exactly what Deon wants, to enchant the naive Min Wan. She uses the same cheap seduction tactics to convince the dressed-up idiot at work to include her in Deon's great project, all to secure a permanent position in the company since she can't do anything on her own. Moreover, she's already noticing Deon doesn't seem like the timid girl she was used to, and that bothers her. The angrier she gets, the more she shows her true snake skin. Of course, the stinky one also gets annoyed seeing Deon form new bonds because she wants to be the only one. She wants Deon to be emotionally dependent so her manipulation can work perfectly. But she can forget it. Deon is increasingly aware of Sum's lack of scruples. The latest discovery comes thanks to Yunu. The chef became a bit clingy after reuniting with Deon, and it's clear he hasn't gotten over his first love. The reason is no surprise. Sum created the barrier between them, interrupting a teenage romance that never had a chance to start. The Viper copied Deon's handwriting and pretended to be her, sending Yunu a very malicious rejection letter. While Deon digests this, Juk practices martial arts with his friends to be a good instructor. The most impressive thing isn't his skill but his big heart, just like the one Deon's father used to draw, meaning he's also a time traveler. In the original timeline, the boss attended Deon's funeral, saw the criminal traitors get arrested, and heard gossip about how her life was ruined. On his way out, his car broke down, and an opportunistic taxi driver, Deon's father, appeared. Realizing the passenger was deeply distressed and willing to do anything to change things, the mysterious driver opened a portal for a second chance. The next day, Juk suffered a fatal accident while swerving to avoid a kitten and woke up in his second life. Now, he's determined to protect Deon at all costs. But if you think he's driven only by a sense of justice for any employee, you're wrong. No. The story of these two began long before we thought about vengeful time travel. It was 2005, on a normal night, when university gentleman Juk stumbled upon a very drunk Deon, so drunk she was about to bite his shoulder for no apparent reason, having trampled her own glasses into a blur. But that didn't stop her from trusting this stranger, willing to keep her company and prevent creeps on the street from endangering her. With her emotions running high after a breakup, she confided in him about her life, from feeling adrift after her father's death to enduring a toxic friendship just to avoid extreme loneliness. With his empathetic nature, Juk listened and shared his vulnerability, telling her how, after his mother's death and his father's remarriage, he didn't feel part of the new family. They ended up falling asleep together in the park, but in the morning, Juk woke up alone, which, of course, we understand. Imagine waking up on the street next to a stranger. Luckily, fate doesn't take breaks, so soon he found Deon at the university campus every day, feeding a tiny kitten. They alternated caring for that kitten separately. The seasons changed, but he remained the same, admiring her from afar. Years later, they reunited when she started working at the company, but again, he missed his chance because she was already dating the insolent Min Won. Even though they shared something so brief, it was so intimate that it's entirely understandable why Juk fell in love. His current regret is realizing he wasted many chances to get closer, so now he plans to act differently. No more hesitation. He appears all charming, and even though to me he looks as handsome as ever despite just ditching the glasses I loved, one person doesn't like the change, Yunu. He feels intimidated, sensing Juk's interest in Deon. But how could a shabby drawer like him compete with a 6-door mirrored wardrobe like the boss? Impossible. Some takes advantage of this insecurity, suggesting that Deon might be having an affair, and the fool gets paranoid, thinking everyone is as unfaithful as he is. That's when his idiotic, sometimes comical side gives way to a violent one, terrorizing Deon in the middle of the street. Seriously, my repertoire of insults is running out. There are no more words in the English language to express my anger toward this disgusting duo. Fortunately, Juk arrives to rescue Deon and witness Min Won's violence firsthand. Our hero is so furious that he nearly strangles the scumbag, but Deon stops him. The coward flees, and those who remain discuss what happened. A few days earlier, Deon saw her new friend, Ruan, with Dio and assumed they were dating. Now, she thinks the boss is trying to cheat on his girlfriend. But wait, Juk immediately clears up the misunderstanding. His only relationship with Ruan is as half-siblings, evident in their childish phone arguments. In reality, he likes Deon, and he says it so naturally that she is left speechless. I think the emotion of finally confessing was so overwhelming that the man faints on her shoulder out of nowhere. My second horrifying thought is, don't tell me it's a terminal illness. But no, it's due to overwork, lack of sleep, and poor diet. Juk has placed Deon at the center of his universe, forgetting to take care of himself. Soon he is discharged and calls for separate taxis, ensuring that even though he likes Deon, he won't overstep any boundaries and make her uncomfortable. And then I still wonder why I love this guy. On one hand, we have this respectful prince, and on the other, there's a toad always being a disservice to humanity. He dealt a hard blow to Deon by removing her name from the project she created, blatantly stealing it. Deon feels like she's back to square one, unable to face the hateful manager. Jae-hook notices this odd movement, and with his authority, he could very well address the injustice. But instead, he respects Deon's wish to solve her problem on her own. However, this doesn't mean he can't show his confidence in her. He may not be the knight in shining armor defeating dragons, but he can very well wear a kimono and be her judo instructor, teaching her fighting techniques so she can be the protagonist of her own story. Even lacking a bit of training, she's capable of facing her opponents both physically and emotionally. Facing off directly are the two shameless ones. After Dwan put Min Won on a pedestal so many times, Sumin began to envy her more and more, determined to steal her friend's boyfriend. In the first opportunity, they are glued together in a dark alley, and thanks to his lack of self-control, Minan soon falls into Sumin's cunning and deceitful provocation. Our Babylonian diva, doing her matchmaking role perfectly, ensures that it's only a matter of time before these fools give in to carnal desires. Then, the two human trash bags can be thrown into the dumpster together, enjoying each other's rotten company. Let's focus on praising Deon. After receiving advice from Ju about being more competent than she was led to believe, she is renewed in spirit to play dumb and deceive the fools who underestimated her, positioning each piece on the board for checkmate. She uses her greatest weapon to her advantage, knowledge of the future. Remember that clumsy executive from the advertising event? Soon, he will be involved in a power abuse scandal against employees. Knowing this, Awan encourages them to put him on the project she was expelled from. When the videos of him being an aggressive jerk go viral, all his dirt is exposed. Consequently, the suited scoundrel is publicly revealed for stealing Deon's idea. The titanium mind of this woman needs to be studied. The abusive director is arrested, the scoundrel is demoted, Sumin isn't promoted, and Deon is brighter than the sun, celebrating on the rooftop with her playlist of BTS songs. To the sound of No More Dream, Jae-hook arrives to congratulate her. Isn't it amazing that he's also an avid ARMY? His favorite song is Spring Day, and hers is Dynamite, but this is 2013, and BTS has just debuted. The most important thing is that these two songs will only be released in 2017 and 2020. It's then that it finally dawns on them. They have been transported from a parallel universe. Both are from the future. I never imagined BTS would be the salvation, but I loved it. This discovery is so overwhelming that they need a place to digest it. At DeLa's house, she explains all the rules she has learned so far, especially how events from the first life are inevitable or at most transferable. It's no use cutting ties with the traitors. She needs to deliver the condemned fate to someone else. Hearing this revelation is a big shock to Juk because he realizes someone must die in his place. For now, he hides this information from Deon because he believes he cannot be the one to accompany her for the rest of her life since his future is limited. Even though it hurts, he looks for Yunu because the chef will live a long and peaceful life to care for and protect Deon. It falls to Ruan to find his brother passed out in tears and alcohol. By the way my couple sensor went off, I already know that Yunu is not the right guy for Deon but rather for the extroverted flower. Please make this happen. Besides the inevitable fate acting against Juk, we still have his grandfather who doesn't like knowing that his grandson is interested in someone who isn't the ideal arranged bride, a certain Yura. Of course, someone with a gigantic stone inside their house wouldn't be the type to respect others' wishes. Even though Jae-hook has always lived on a tight leash, his grandfather does not accept his freedom. So he places a trusted man to watch over him, the new HR employee, Mr. Liu. At first, he seems quite unpleasant to Ms. Yen, but after passing responsibilities to her, the man fully recognizes her capabilities and doesn't seem to be a bad egg after all. Soon, it's the day of the company workshop, one of those events to strengthen team relationships but only serves for Sumin to show her claws. Everyone participates in a flag hunt to determine who will sleep in a fancy trailer or on a shabby mattress. D1 knows very well that Sumin will cheat and convince others to do the heavy lifting for her, which is obviously unfair. But her methods are what scare me the most. Who licks their own blood to seduce a brainless guy? In contrast to this exploitative personality, D1 wants to rely on her own efforts to win. All she asks is for Jae-hook to be her confidant when she needs to vent since they are the only ones going through the same experience. He, however, is willing to be much more than that. By showing the heart he drew, he asks Deon to use him as she sees fit, like the sword her father gave her. But she prefers Juk to seek his own happiness in this second life, not knowing she is his happiness. Deon is so set on this independence mindset that she ends up putting herself in danger to capture the first-place flag. Fortunately, Jae-hook rescues her, frantically worried, and shows that there's a middle ground. She doesn't need to exploit others like Sumin, but can ask for help and rely on friends for mutual support. That's why he's there. What will make him happy in this second life is being a safe harbor for her, not drifting in the turbulent waves. My goodness, together they grab the flag, and Deon just needs to protect her prize. Of course, the rat wouldn't accept that. She brazenly reveals her Machiavellian side when she attacks Deon violently to steal the flag. Although Deon fights back with satisfying hair pulls, she still hesitates a few times. You're lacking hatred, girl. Sorry to inform you, but making the same mistake twice is foolish. So she stops being nice, recovers what is rightfully hers, and in the end, receives what she justly fought for. Feeling entitled to complain about something, the foolish Sumin goes to confront Deon, indignant that her friend is acting differently. Deon, tired of enduring a lot and still being sympathetic, finally tells the stinky girl off, saying she no longer likes her. Of course, provoking Sumin's anger is part of the plan because now the venomous girl is furious about the rejection and will take revenge exactly as we expected, by stealing what Deon supposedly holds most dear, Minwon. Poor girl, with a lamentably calculated pout, Sumin seduces the fool, and the two commit libidinous acts right there at the camp. I don't know if I'm the only one, but please tell me I'm not. I get a bit loony, you know? I feel in a constant, ironic contradiction. Even though I have several fits of rage when I see the two together, I still need to root for their case, because only then will they destroy themselves, and Deon will be free. Speaking of Deon, poor thing, from afar she watches her success with tears in her eyes. Because of her abrupt death and time travel in between, she never had a chance to suffer the betrayal. Only now, seeing it with her own eyes, does she understand the extent of the blow she received. It seems the biggest betrayal came from her friend because, honestly, we already expect something like this from men. But discovering that the only person she trusted was never, ever genuine and betrayed her in such a sly way? Wow, that's too cruel. Luckily, Jae-hook is there, providing all the comfort she needs. Meanwhile, the scoundrel Min Wan soon sidelines Sumin, suggesting they continue with just heated encounters. Of course, as the lowest of opportunists, he thinks Deon is the woman to marry because she would accept everything silently and work like a beast of burden to support him. But Sumin doesn't aim to be treated like a doormat, so she will continue using her anxious puppy charms to draw the depraved man's attention, even in the middle of an important company tasting event. Instead of that, he respects Deon's wish to solve her problem alone. However, that doesn't mean he can't show his confidence in her, right? He might not be the hero in shining armor who slays dragons, but he can very well wear a kimono and be her judo teacher, teaching her fighting techniques so she can be the main character of her own story. It shows that even if she's a bit inexperienced, she can face her opponents both physically and emotionally. Two shameless people also confront each other. After Duan put Min Wan on a pedestal so many times, Sumin began to envy her more and more and is determined to steal her friend's boyfriend. In the first opportunity, they are glued together in a dark alley. Thanks to his lack of self-control, Minan falls into Sumin's sly and deceitful provocation. Since our queen of matchmaking is doing her job well, it's only a matter of time before these two fools give in to their carnal desires. Then, both human trash bags can be dumped at once, but let them enjoy each other's rotten company. Let's focus on praising Deon. After the advice she received from Ju about being more competent than she was led to believe, she's now spirited to pretend to be naive and deceive those who underestimated her, positioning every piece on the chessboard for checkmate. She uses her greatest weapon to her advantage: knowledge of the future. Remember that clueless executive from the advertising event? Soon, he will be involved in a scandal of power abuse against employees. Knowing this, Deon encourages them to put him on the project she was expelled from. When the videos of him being an aggressive jerk go viral, all his dirty deeds are exposed. Consequently, the suited scoundrel is publicly shamed for stealing Deon's idea. The mastermind behind this, her titanium mind, needs to be studied. The aggressive director is arrested, the scoundrel is demoted, and Sumin is not promoted. Deon is brighter than the sun, celebrating on the rooftop with her playlist. To the sound of No More Dream, J. Hook arrives to congratulate her. Isn't it something that he's also an avid ARMY? His favorite song is Spring Day, and hers is Dynamite, but that's from 2013. BTS had just debuted, and most importantly, these two songs would only be released in 2017 and 2020. That's when they finally realized they were transported from a parallel universe. They are from the future. I never imagined BTS would be the salvation, but I loved it. It's such an overwhelming discovery that they need a place to digest it. At Deon's house, she explains all the rules she's learned so far, especially how the events of the first life are inevitable and, at most, transferable. In other words, there's no use cutting ties with traitors. She needs to hand over the doomed fate to someone else. Hearing this revelation is a huge shock for Ju because he realizes someone should die in his place. For now, he hides this information from Deon because he thinks he cannot be the one to accompany her for the rest of her life, given his limited future. Even though it hurts, he seeks out Yunu because the chef will live a long and peaceful life to take care of and protect Deon. Ruan has to find his brother, who is passed out from tears and alcohol, and just by the way my couple sensor beeped, I already know Yunu is not the right guy for Deon, but for the extroverted flower. Please make this happen. Besides the inevitable fate acting against Ju, we also have his grandfather who doesn't like to know that his grandson is interested in someone who isn't the ideal arranged bride, a certain Yura. Of course, a person who has a gigantic stone inside his house wouldn't be the type to respect others' wishes. Even though Ju has always lived on a tight leash, the grandfather doesn't accept his grandson's freedom. So, he puts a trusted man to watch over him, the new HR employee, Mr. Lee. At first, he seems pretty unfriendly with Ms. Yen, but after delegating responsibilities to her, he fully acknowledges her abilities and doesn't seem to be a rotten egg after all. Soon, the day of the company's workshop arrives, one of those events to strengthen team relationships but only serves to let Sumin show her little wings. Everyone participates in a flag hunt to determine who would sleep in a fancy trailer or a shabby mattress. Deon knows very well that Sumin will cheat and convince others to do the heavy lifting for her. Of course, this is unfair, but what scares me most are her methods. Seriously, who licks their own blood to seduce a brainless guy? In contrast to this exploitative personality, Deon wants to rely on her own effort to win. All she asks is that Ju be her confidant when she needs to vent, as they are the only ones experiencing the same thing. He is willing to be much more than that. By showing the heart he drew, he asks Deon to use him as she pleases, like the sword her father gave her. But she prefers that Ju seeks his own happiness in this second life, not knowing she is his happiness. Deon is so focused on independence that she puts herself in danger to capture the first-place flag. Fortunately, Ju rescues her, frantic with worry, showing there's a middle ground. She doesn't need to exploit others like Sumin, but she can ask for help and rely on friends for mutual support. That's why he's there. What will make him happy in this second life is being a safe harbor for her, so she doesn't drift in turbulent waves. My God, this way they capture the flag together, and Deon only needs to protect her prize. But of course, the rat wouldn't accept this. She shamelessly reveals her Machiavellian face when she attacks Deon violently to steal the flag. Although Deon retaliates with satisfying hair pulls, she still falters a few times. You're lacking hatred, girl. I hate to tell you, but making the same mistake twice is foolishness. So she stops being nice, takes back what's rightfully hers, and in the end, gets what she fought for. Feeling entitled to complain, stupid Sumin confronts Deon, indignant at her friend's different behavior. Finally, Deon, tired of enduring too much and still being polite, gives the stinky girl a firm rejection, saying she no longer likes her. Of course, provoking Sumin's anger is part of the plan because now the venomous girl is furious from rejection and will take revenge exactly as expected by stealing what Deon supposedly values most, Minwan. Poor thing, with a calculated pout, Sumin seduces the fool, and they commit lewd acts right there at the camp. And I don't know if I'm the only one, please tell me I'm not, but I feel a bit crazy, you know? Because I feel in an ironic contradiction all the time. Even though I have several tantrums when I see the two together, I still need to root for their case because only then will they destroy each other and free Deon, right? Speaking of Deon, poor thing, from afar she watches her success with tears in her eyes. Due to her abrupt death and a time travel in between, she never had a chance to suffer the betrayal. Only now, seeing it all with her own eyes, she understands the extent of the blow she received. It seems the greatest betrayal came from her friend because, honestly, from a man, you already expect something like this. But discovering that the only person she trusted was never ever true and betrayed her so cunningly, wow, that's too cruel. Fortunately, Ju is there providing all the comfort she needs. As for the scoundrel Min Wan, he soon sidelines Sumin, suggesting they continue only with heated encounters. Of course, like the lowest of opportunists, he thinks Deon is the one to marry because she would silently accept everything and work like a mule to support him. Sumin doesn't aim to be treated like a mistress, so she will keep using her anxious dog charms to attract the depraved guy's attention, even in the middle of an important company tasting event. But while the makeout session goes wild in the depot, an accident happens. A client has an allergic reaction after eating food that wasn't labeled. Of course, the ones responsible for placing the sign were too busy to avoid a scolding. Minen doesn't report the incident and covers up the mistake by paying the hospital expenses of the victim out of his own pocket. Silly, right? He thought he was rolling in money, but now all he has left is a breakdown after discovering that his failing investments have completely sunk since the company he invested in went bankrupt. Broke and with a mountain of debt, he sees his salvation in Deon. She realizes the donkey will propose to her earlier than expected. Just thinking about facing the same mediocre proposal from the original life gives her chills. So, with a low budget, the scoundrel chooses Deon's birthday to pathetically propose with deflated balloons, a hard cake crust, and a smeared sign. Deon would rather be thrown on the tatami 1,000,000 times than relive that nightmare on such an important date. Say no more, Ju has an idea. First, he formally introduces the orange kitten, assuming the little diva isn't antisocial as usual because he remembers his old friend Deon. A cupid cat, it's the first time I'm seeing it, and well, since the dreadful proposal has to happen to incite Sumin, let it be the way Deon deserves. Ju simply takes a massive investment and uses drones to light up the sky in a light show.